Good evening, this is Matt Carty, MEP. This is the European Parliament in Strasbourg, and for the 8th time, this is not the RTE News. Thanks a million, everybody, for tuning in. We have you up here, so any comments or anything that you want to share with us, questions for our panel. As you know, this is one of the ways that we try and keep people in Ireland especially, but we have viewers in all sorts of funny places in the world informed of some of the work that we as Sinn Féin MEPs are doing. But it's also an opportunity, we hope, for people to engage in some of the big debates that are happening here in the European Parliament. And of course, if we get time, we also touch on some of the political topics of the day that are happening in Ireland and across Europe. So remember, hit like, hit share, because we want to try and get the message out to as many people as possible. If you hit share, we're going to put you in a draw for a Towards a United Ireland mug. And we're actually going to do the draw from last month. And we've 2 draws to do because we didn't actually
Have we ever done a draw?
No, we have, yeah. And I understand that Siobhan Mulvey and Ciara Downey, between them, have actually now gone and actually made sure that the people who won the mugs have received their mugs. So apparently their lives have changed for the better, those who have received.
The mugs were only resting in his account.
So, our guests this week, and we have a sort of a hop-along guest because she's here and then she won't be here, but then she's coming back. Riada, MEP for Ireland South, member of the Fisheries, the Culture and Education and the Budget committees here in the European Parliament. All round sound person, I think.
So you're going to be leaving now
you're going to be leaving to speak at
I'd say in about 10 minutes, maybe less.
So we have she's about 6 staff here, and they're all making sure that there's no problems. So Emma Clancy, been on before, of course. That's because she's a genius. She's the GUENGL Political Advisor on Economic and Monetary Affairs Committee, a Sinn Féin activist also, who's coming with some real words of doom, and we're really going to be fearful when we listen to her.
You're exaggerating them, but sure.
And our special guest this episode, not that Emma and Liadh aren't special, of course, but our special guest on this occasion is Giorgos Karatsiobanis.
Karatsiobanis.
Yeah, I'm very. Say that again.
Karatsiobanis. It's an easy way to pronounce it.
Karatsiobanis. Okay, very good. So Giorgos is a member of the Greek political party Syriza. Many of you will remember from our mobilisations in support of them. He's also a member of the Central Committee of Syriza. So you're a really important guy. You're in Greek terms. Works here in the European Parliament. Particular focus on the Regional Development Committee, but also working on other things. So Liadh, you might have to head off in a few minutes, but you're going to come back. I cannot get these comments up.
I'm hoping there's a load of comments already.
Okay.
So get commenting, people.
How was your Strasbourg been so far?
It's, as usual, quite intense. Every Strasbourg is like that. But before I have to leg it into the chamber to talk about fascinating European Investment Bank, of which Emma is, I'm sure, going to be referring to in
what is it you're speaking on exactly?
Doom and gloom. The European Investment Bank and how it's failing us, really. Lack of accountability, democratic transparency, all of that. But
providing funds, vulture funds to buy up forestry land in Leitrim and other countries.
And more besides. But I do want to wish 24 students who were in a bus crash this morning in Limerick a speedy recovery.
Nobody
was, thank God there wasn't, but nonetheless we just want to wish them a speedy recovery, so I just wanted to put that out of the way before I have to run down to chamber. And I also just want to
what happened there? Do we know exactly?
I don't know. It was a bus crash, so I presume they were all on the bus and it just crashed, as these things happen. Care needs to be taken on the road.
Situation in Meath where I think 7 young girls were killed.
It could have been horrific, but thank God that they're all safe. And the other thing, and it might tie in actually eventually later on to maybe a broader conversation about how we're going from an economy perspective, because there's a bookshop in Cork called the Liadh Rochelle Bookshop, which is an iconic bookshop. It was hugely important in terms of our culture and history and the Irish language. It was, parents all over the county would go to it for school books, and it's closing after 120 years.
Wow.
That's in the city, yeah?
Yeah, it's in Oliver Plunkett Street in Cork, and I just find that so sad because it was so iconic. And it's just a sign of the times. People are using Amazon.
That's what I use.
All of that, and they're not supporting local businesses. So you should, support your local business.
The problem I have, I usually
economy.
read about 4 or 5 books at a time, and I move from chapter to chapter. And when you're travelling all the time, it's actually hard to when you're lugging books.
You're a special reading 4 or 5 books at a time. Yeah.
And what I do is, when anybody, and we sometimes swap gifts, especially in our office, of books around Christmas, but anyone that gives me a book, I buy it then again on the Kindle. So it ends up that by giving me, anybody who gives me a book, you're actually costing me money because I have to buy your book again. But that's another story. So obviously shops closed, not much we can do about it.
And it's in the heart of Cork, but it's just indicative of how many shops that are closing.
WH Smith's or some of them big chains of bookstores, they're reporting record profits.
Well, they are, and of course they can compete because they're the far bigger chain stores. Liam Rushell was a family-owned, owned by well-known Republicans at the time. Huge language activists as well, and it's just such a pity. It was in the heart of the city, and it's not being replaced. And you see, obviously, Easton's and Smith's and all of those bookshops,
will come in, yeah.
doing. I mean, it's great that people are reading actual physical books as opposed to the Kindles. Yeah. But anyway, it's a pity. Okay. But I wish the Liam O'Rochelle and all their family the best of luck and whatever endeavour they choose after this.
Okay, what's been your big issues working on this week?
A lot, really. Even though in some ways, in regards to the budget, it's been pretty quiet, and even with the fisheries as well. We had the minority report, which is really good. It was a resolution, and it's to ensure that there is rights being given to those who are discriminated, particularly minorities like the traveller community, and workers' rights right across the gamut, really.
Oh, when you say a minority report, you mean an actual report on minorities as opposed to...
It's a resolution. No, it's a good step. It's a progressive step. But like all these things, Matt, it's a letter of intent. It's not really, going to force the government in any legal way to say you have to recognise the rights.
It's not legislation.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a political statement.
And even though it's all very well and good, we need proper investment into ensuring there is quality right across the board. But it's good for language specifically because it again puts more pressure on the government. Year in the Seach Bliain na Gaeilge, Year of Cultural Heritage, that they have to have some meaningful engagement with it as opposed to just more soft words.
Yeah. Okay. Emma, the world coming to an end economically?
Well, I was just going to take up where Leah went through her main priorities in Strasbourg this week, and most of my time has been taken up with negotiating the mandate of a new committee that we're forming. A lot of you would know that Matt has been very active on issues of tax avoidance and tax evasion here on the Panama Papers Committee, which came to an end in, between October and December last year, with the final report being adopted in December. But at around the same time, the Paradise Papers leak came out. So obviously, these issues are still, despite a raft of new initiatives and new legislation that has been put in place, the issues are still massive, and the system just isn't working despite these superficial changes that have been made. So a new committee it's in the process of being set up. I literally just was emailing the final mandate there 5 minutes ago. So all of the political groups now have agreed on quite a good broad mandate, which will address issues that we looked at in the Panama Papers Committee, that were looked at around tax rulings in previous inquiry committees of the European Parliament, and will have a specific focus on the revelations in the Paradise Papers. And the Paradise Papers were particularly relevant to an Irish audience because they included revelations around Apple, around the Irish government's use of the so-called single malt tax avoidance scheme, which is basically a replacement of the double Irish scheme. And then individuals like Bono, obviously, and his Lithuanian mall. So we're, basically Matt is kind of guaranteed to be a member of this new committee when it forms in March.
I wouldn't preempt the decision of our GUENGL
this is my personal assessment.
Okay, so Leah's just popping off for a minute, but you'll be back in a couple of minutes, hopefully. Okay, we're dependent on you.
I would guess, I would make an educated guess that Matt will be a member of this new committee, so that will continue to be a focus over our work in the Parliament in the coming period.
But it's a lot of heavy stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, tax avoidance. It's not just tax avoidance. We do have a particular focus on corporate tax avoidance, particularly because of the role that the Irish state plays in facilitating tax avoidance. But of course, there is also the issues of money laundering and financial crime, and so it's a massive area. It's probably one of the leading causes in the world to global inequality, the leading ways that happens. So, it's a big priority for us.
Okay, Giorgos, thank you for coming along, sir.
Thank you.
It is always good to have
First of all, you will have many Greek names in that list when you start this
vote. You think so? Yeah, with the oligarchs in Greece are famous.
Not only oligarchs, many politicians from the whole political system are in most of these lists.
Pure rotten.
And we find every day. Already yesterday there was an important event in Greece with Novartis, the pharmaceutical company,
Okay.
where 2 former prime ministers and 8 ministers are presumed to be involved in this corruption scandal. And right now it's a very big issue.
But I
in
thought
Greece.
Europe told me nobody in Greece pays tax anyway.
No.
So,
Usually the ones that don't have money pay, and the ones that have money, they don't.
yeah, well, that's
I
the
guess it's the same in
I
Ireland.
was watching today, Jean-Luc Mélenchon has called for Syriza to be, I don't know, ejected from the European Left
Yes.
Party. Has Syriza failed as a left-wing government in Greece?
Well, I think the response can be given from the electoral results we have.
Okay.
A few days ago, we had our 3 years anniversary in government.
Yep.
In the first stage, the first year of this government, we had some drawbacks. We took a step back in some issues, agreeing with an agreement that we did not agree as a party.
Yeah.
But because of the economic situation of the country, we had to take
you
a
were-
decision and take the responsibility because we were in government. But at the same time, a few weeks after this decision, we called for new elections, and the support for Syriza was even bigger. So, in relation with Mélenchon's statement, for us it's very clear that the European left does not have the luxury of dividing more itself.
Yeah.
We are already a small force inside the European Parliament already. Our aim is not to divide, but to enlarge as much as we can with progressive forces and try to have a bigger impact at the European level.
So what, is it impossible for a left-wing government to implement a real radical programme for change inside the EU with with the rules and the constraints that...
It could be complicated, but it's possible.
Yeah?
In these 3 years we are in government, there were some very important progress in the social situation. The most important for me is the reduction of unemployment in these 3 years from 27 to 20%. It's still a very
20%?
It's still a big number, but this 7% it's also a big decrease at the same time. There is free access to health system, to the public health system for uninsured and unemployed people that it was not the case still 3 years ago. And at the same time, we see the first signs of recovery, signs of improvement in the small businesses and the consumption rates, but also psychological change. For example, the last Christmas break, we've seen most of the shops in the streets working and being active and people with buying different products. And most importantly, on the way of the exit from this program, from the current program, which we believe will be in August. After that, we won't be monitored in every move, and we'll be able to, well, we will enter in the economic
So when's the next elections due in Syriza?
The national ones in October 2019.
Okay, so this year?
In 2 years.
2019?
19,
okay,
yes,
and
in
is there
1.5
any
years.
regional or local elections in the meantime that
Not
you
yet.
can test?
All 4 elections and the European ones will be in 2019.
Okay, okay, and you're confident that you can remain in power?
We are confident because already we see some signs, some positive signs.
But there's been lots of protests and there's been some controversy in terms of some anti-austerity marches and...
No, mainly the main mobilizations were the last few days on the question of the dispute that has been involving Greece for the last 25 years with our neighbors. We call
Macedonia, yes. So
we
what's
call
the
it
story
FYROM,
there?
the former Yugoslavic Republic of Macedonia. It's an unresolved dispute for the last 25 years, and there is a window of opportunity that maybe the government of the left might be able to give a solution to this conflict.
But why would people in Greece decide that they had the right to tell another country what name it calls itself?
So, because the majority of the people that was in the streets these last days believe that the word Macedonia is only Greek and cannot be used by anybody else, even though the geographic region of Macedonia is located in 3 different countries. But because of the history and Alexander the Great and all the history around it, it's very strong in the identity both of Greeks, of northern Greece, but also of our neighbors. So we are in the process, the government is in the process of resolving together with the government of Fyrom, of resolving hopefully the next weeks this long dispute.
Okay, that's going to be interesting. So, Emma, give us an independent critique of Syriza in government. How have they done? You know, what have they done good? What have they done bad? What lessons can we in Sinn Féin learn from when we take power?
Well, I think the Syriza government have definitely been very, and I work with Syriza colleagues every day in GUENGL, have been very much conscious about trying to protect the most vulnerable from the impact of the austerity that's being forced on them by the IMF and ECB, and the Troika. The political issue about what approach the left should take. I mean, I've always believed, for the past several years, and since the election of Syriza, that the position of the left needs to be one of campaigning in a united front against the attacks on the Greek people and the Greek government by the Troika, I think that to get into these sort of little divisive fights among the left is just counterproductive, as Giorgos said. Our task is to say to the ECB, to the Commission, and to some of the member state governments that are strong-arming the Greek government into a very difficult economic situation, to say that we reject your ideology, we reject your policies.
I remember saying at the time, and I think I've said this to you a dozen times, that while people all over Europe on the left were out protesting, this time 3 years ago, in support of the Syriza government, in support of the Greek people, and we had our hashtag Oki and our Greek flags and which was all really important. But what actually the Greek people needed was another progressive government around the table. I don't know if you followed the reactions of each government, but surely the most disappointing aspect of that whole period was the position of governments in countries like Ireland and Portugal, who had also been forced through bailout programs in terms of how they responded to Syriza when it came to the negotiating. They had effectively ganged up with Germany and the ECB to put a gun to the Greek government's head and to force them to overturn the decision of the referendum. Do you have a view on that in terms of? Well,
we feel alone.
Yeah,
it's true at the European Council. That's why we expect you as well to win in Ireland.
We hope so.
And it might come sooner than we believe. The important thing is that from one side for us it was very clear the support of the population in Greece, but also in a very important solidarity movement all around Europe and the world. And we believe that with our win in Greece in January 2015, a lot of left progressive movements all around Europe managed to come out stronger to the society, saying that this situation that the left can be in government could be a reality.
It exposed some of the weaknesses at the heart of the European institutions. Just their almost violent reaction to a certain democratic decision that they didn't support the EU's austerity agenda. I think was very telling. I think it arguably contributed to the Brexit vote, which again has been ignored in terms of the lessons. But I think what people have seen is that clearly this isn't about whether or not the ECB's policies work for what they would consider to be peripheral countries. It's all about the German economy and to a lesser extent the French economy.
No, it's a big debate also in this Future of Europe debate that has begun now in the European Parliament. Welcome back.
Riada is back.
But it's very clear that for us, that in one of the corners of Europe, that it's important to have the dynamics both in terms of society but also in the Parliament and combine these two forces, especially when the left is in a situation where it could govern. It's also a criticism for us that we were not ready.
Okay, so you
when we went to government.
Yes.
But I believe, at least for the Greek situation, after 40 years of bipartisan system of the right wing and social democracy that has led the country in the today's situation, perhaps it was good that we were not as ready as they were. involved with many corruption scandals, destroying the economy with a huge debt.
Well, let
that
me
we
ask
have
you
today,
this. Let me ask you this
and so
because I
on.
want to move on. In terms of all the movement, because I understand economic recovery is hugely important. Are there programs or have there been successes in terms of the redistribution in Greece? Because Greece, like a lot of our countries, had historically, huge inequalities in terms of the richest and the poorest in society. Have you been making moves and been successful in terms of addressing some of those?
Well, the very first law project of the new government in 2015 was exactly a law project to end the humanitarian crisis, involving housing hundreds of thousands of people, free water and electricity for many households, school meals that were not existing in Greece.
Okay.
And already the results are very important because I have to recall the situation before was that you had many students in school or high school or primary school that they were fainting during the classes because they could not eat breakfast or something else. So this was the very first law project, but even today, because of the good economic results that we have, the government was able to already give some bonuses to some categories such as the pension people or under 25-year-olds unemployed people, young people. And this, for us, the way is to continue these bonuses, of course, not as a form of a bonus, but as a regular addition of income. And starting from August of 2018, when we will get out of the memoranda, to start this economic recovery in a different speed.
Okay.
To continue.
And we'll come back to some of these issues. We've a little less than 10 minutes left. Pick a number, please, Giorgos, between 1 and 126.
It's tough.
Any number.
72.
72. So we're going to see, this is from the December Facebook Live that we didn't actually do the draw to see who has won the mug. 72.
Be any reader.
Your number is up to
I'm
68.
there. Okay. I'm there. 72. Letterkenny Sinn Féin. So whoever administers that page, we're going to get them to win a mug. And just remind me before the end, so we do the January one as well. So Siobhan will be in touch with you in Letterkenny Sinn Féin. Keep sharing, because it does two things. It gives you a really good chance of winning towards the United Ireland mug, and it also gets me more viewers on my Facebook page and the Facebook Live page. Leah, how did you get on? Did you rock the house?
I absolutely rocked.
Did you get a standing ovation in plenary? How many people were actually sitting around in the plenary listening?
Too many to count, but the most important one was
more or less than 4.
There was far more than that. Probably more than watching the show here, maybe. But
I'll let you know, right now, live, there are 54 people watching.
Oh my God.
And on average, we get about 3,000 viewers.
That's fantastic.
Although we always get higher viewers when Lynn's on.
When Lynn is on,
yeah,
is that already?
I don't know why that is.
Come on, put up your socks. No, Commissioner Katainen was there and he taking notes, and so that's good. I'm sure he's going to come back to me on every single issue that I raised, and I'd say he was very wildly impressed by the amount of criticism that I levelled on the European Investment Bank.
Did you mention forestry?
Not forestry, because I only had a minute and 30 seconds, and I had an ocean of stuff to get into that. Forestry is a huge issue, as we know, and that'll be in the next speech.
Yeah, Michael Doyle is saying hello from Leinster House, your fellow Monaghan man's office. He's working in Cuivan O'Callaghan's office.
We miss you in Strasbourg.
So, Emma, okay.
I can answer your last question that I didn't actually get to.
Okay, yeah.
So you asked me about the global economic situation
I was
at
going
the
to
moment,
come to you on that.
and I went into the Paradise Papers instead. But I just wanted to talk about the economic situation because of the market volatility that we've seen this week. So a lot of people on Monday, it started last week, but on Monday when the Wall Street Stock Exchange plunged, dropped a record number of points in one day. A lot of people started saying, well, is this a return of, is this a new financial crisis? Or it just gave people jitters and, brought back memories of 2007 and 2008. So we want to have our heads around exactly what's happening in the stock markets, but also more broadly in the real economy. And I think the reason why there are a number of reasons why this sell-off happened. and one of the most concerning is that, the people who are involved in the stock market said, well, actually it was machines who have algorithms who are, that are tied to volatility.
It's like a more boring version of the Terminator, isn't it?
And the machine said, sell, sell, sell. And I actually saw a very funny tweet which was saying that the robots are pissed off that humans have rejected their robot money Bitcoin, and they're taking their revenge.
Okay.
But anyway, so that was one alarming aspect of it, was the involvement of machines. But the real issue is that the markets are very scared of easy money coming to an end. So we've had 10 years of very loose monetary policy from central banks in.
But it hasn't been actually directed back to real economies. It's been going to actually financial
institutions. Exactly, it goes directly to banks and it goes directly to multinationals. And the ECB, for example, has their corporate sector purchase program where they give money. They just give money. They make money and give it to companies like Ryanair. And Ryanair is one of the and also to massively polluting fossil fuel companies. So this is how they've kept the economy afloat and created a new debt bubble and new asset bubbles. And so the moment that there was the reason why this whole stock market plunge happened was because
we've only 5 minutes left. So
okay,
tell us quickly is there going to be an economic crash? Yes or no?
Well, of course there's going to be another economic crash because we live in a cyclical crisis-prone capitalist
Is it going to be
system.
as bad as the 2007, 2008
I
crash?
think the key things to watch are the economies that weren't hit by the previous one, like obviously the last crisis started in the US. I think now we have to look at the massive levels of private debt in China, the Scandinavian countries, and Australia
Are the Germans going to feel a bit of the pain this time?
No, they're not.
They never do.
They're not. And the other key issue to look at in terms of the US is the student loan, which could be massive levels of debt, which could be the next subprime, crisis.
Okay. You only have to pick a number between 1 and 60 because we only got 60 shares the last time, which sort of undermines my comment about Lynn getting lots of viewers. That's not good enough, folks. We need more shares than that. But anyway, pick one between 1 and 60 because those who did have an increased chance of winning.
43.
43.
It better be somebody from Cork, that's all I'm saying.
We've had Cork winners.
I don't think we've had, they all seem to be better Kenyan.
Conor Green, I don't know where you're from, Conor. You have a very nice profile picture. Congratulations. Thank you, Emma. So make contact with us, or otherwise you can do what everyone else did and wait 6 months. So these are very sought after. Hit share, let your friends know, because nobody else does anything like this in Irish politics, I'll have you know, where we have live interaction. We even heard Emma say pissed live on air. That doesn't happen in anything else. Sean McBroading's only in. Hello from Leitrim. He says, Sean, where were you? The show's nearly over. You'll have to watch it back and then hit share. So listen, Liadh, this time last month or the last Strasbourg, Leo Varadkar strode in, stood up in front of the plenary, and he asked MEPs to support the concept of transnational lists, which are a ludicrous system whereby MEPs from across would be elected across a constituency comprising of 27 countries. Nuts. Thankfully today, not only did he fail to secure the support of the majority of MEPs, he couldn't even get the support of his Fine Gael MEPs. So even they think Leo is daft. So do you think it's time for Leo Varadkar to resign after this monumental mess up on his part?
Maybe he should just go on the transnational list himself and we could put him into some kind of floating, rotating space that has nothing to do with Ireland. I'm sure that somebody from Greece wouldn't necessarily know what the conditions are like in Kilgarvan and County Kerry, for instance. So it's a ridiculous notion that and we talk about the disengagement of Europe.
Giorgos, do you support a United Ireland?
Of course.
Good answer. So
well,
we have.
I already said that in Carrimacross.
Yes, yes. People don't know we had Giorgos in Carrimacross twice.
Yes.
You were there for the study days?
No,
for the Brexit tour. So you can recommend Carrimacross as a holiday destination.
Of course.
It's a good time. Emma, you're not getting to the Ardèche this weekend?
No, I'm not.
You'll be able to watch live. So get to the RDS if you can at all. We're going to be electing our new president and vice president, Mary Lou McDonald and Michelle O'Neill.
Historic event.
Yes,
so
it should be brilliant.
We shouldn't be allowed to use the word historic
but
anymore.
It is historic. It is historic. It really is.
Yeah. Okay.
It really, really is.
And best of luck to both of them. I mean, it will be brilliant.
Big job of work. On the 24th of February, all of Ireland, the entire population of Ireland, is going to Cork for the day, where Liadh ní Riada is going to welcome us to the Rebel County for the next in our Towards a United Ireland series of conferences. We have a really good lineup.
I will be able to make it to that.
It's going to be really good. And on the 24th of March, a month later, we're going to be in London. So if you get on, there is an Eventbrite page and there's also a Facebook page. Register to that. Anybody you know in England, you know, they don't need to be Irish, they just need to have an interest in politics and a big political move that's happening right across
Do you think Theresa May will be going to the one in London?
She's not invited.
She's not.
But yeah, no, if she wants to come along, absolutely, we'll give you a speaking slot. Theresa, I was at an event on Saturday night in Kells in County Meath for a good friend of ours called Joe Riley, who I've mentioned here before. Joe is heroically battling a very serious illness, but it was just a mighty night. It was fantastic. So we just want to send our best wishes again to Joe. Any last words of advice coming from Syriza to Sinn Féin in terms of what we need to be doing before we get into government in order to make that process more productive?
So first of all, after visiting Carrickmacross, you can come to Greece for the summer.
Okay, I would like
It's
that.
always an open invitation. And for sure, you should continue on your work, the daily work, in the European Parliament, but also back in Ireland. The important thing cannot be analysed or prepared in advance. You will see the change in everyday life and the approach of people towards you when you explain your electoral program. But it's not just the elections. It's the whole process.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this was the decisive factor for us, that we were next to the citizen in all the levels and all the programs as well.
Okay.
Of life.
Liadh, they're screwing up on the broadband. We still haven't got it in most of the counties we represent, so there's still people who want to watch this Facebook Live and they can't.
And they can't, that's terrible. Well, of course we have huge gaps in broadband services, and we've seen now with the air